Welcome everyone to the Sunday program and everyone online as well. We've just finished a 10-day session and it's a very precious experience of being together. It was focused around a great Zen ancestor named Bodhidharma, who is said to have brought Chan Buddhism from India to China in the 5th or 6th century. You've probably seen figures of Bodhidharma in Japan. It's called Dharma, the doll with very fierce, determined eyes, a symbol of intense commitment to practice and aspiration. He is said to have sat in front of a wall for 9 years, just facing off with himself, and I think we can all appreciate how difficult that is after these 10 days. And he was a person of no easy answers. When Emperor Wu asked, "Who is standing before me?" he said, "I don't know." Unpressed on whether Emperor Wu's actions were going to amount to anything, Emperor Wu had done all kinds of donations for the Dharma, built temples, ordained priests, felt that somehow his actions should pay off. Bodhidharma's response was no merit. Meaning, life isn't explainable like that. Bodhidharma is a great teacher if you're interested in the mystery, the mysterious nature of our experience. After he sat in front of the wall for 9 years, he came to the conclusion that human beings are harmful and have been for innumerable time. That's a little different than what we often hear, which is our Buddha nature is just here, a little bit of dust. He's kind of coming at it a bit differently. He's saying we're actually extremely harmful. There's a lot of harm here, a lot of purification that needs to happen. This is not such a popular idea. It's sort of something that makes us feel a bit uncomfortable to hear that. But that was his kind of view, his level of commitment to practice. For Bodhidharma, having expectations about your life, this is right, this is wrong, this is failure, this is success, is fundamentally deluded because it assumes that we know the full picture of who we are. For Bodhidharma, our lives are the fruits of causes and conditions, most of which we do not know. So you don't even know the chapter of the story you're in, let alone whether you're in the beginning or the end. So he suggests that it's wise to be in accord, to be flexible, receptive, adaptable. So, to help us with that, he encapsulates this into a teaching. And we've been exploring this teaching this week. It's called 2 Entrances, 4 Practices. He says that despite infinite paths, there are really only 2 means. One is principle and one is practice. One is total faith or one is method. Principle is to accept it's just like this, being in accord with the way things are. He describes the qualities of this experience It would be still, non-discriminative. It would have flow. I think we can all relate to this state. We've probably had short tastes of it, or we would not have signed up for a 10-day sesshin. We have probably experienced this through maybe artistic practices, sports, in nature, maybe witnessing a birth or a death. Moments when we have simply let go. However, this is not our primary way of orienting or operating, so he very kindly suggests some practices for cultivating this spirit of letting go. And we've been looking at these this week. The first one is accept adversity. The second is adapt to conditions. The third is stop seeking. And the fourth is be in accord with the Dharma. I think this is such a wonderful way of putting the spotlight on our suffering human experience, which is the opposite of these instructions. So accept adversity. No, we want life to be comfortable, easeful, pleasing. Adapt to conditions. No, we want things to go our way because we know the best way. Stop seeking. No, we love to take, to accumulate. Be in accord with the Dharma. Do we really want to be morally and physically upright? Not sure. Bodhidharma suggests that life is unfolding through us. And giving up resistance should be a primary spiritual focus. Unclenching, relaxing, deep breath. He's asking some very pointed questions. Why are we so scared to let go? Why are we holding on so tight? Why are we so afraid to trust? Why do we fear the mystery? But the point of all this time in front of a wall was more than just self-inquiry. From our time in Sesshin, we can see how stilling the mind allows a great sensitivity to the deep stirrings of the heart. I imagining him nurturing this most sacred of fetuses, and he's showing us how to do this with his attention to his body and breath. And he didn't just stay sitting in front of a wall. This sense of ripening began to move him. He got up. And this directionality was not a product of his thoughts. He trusted his gut. He engaged, shared his creativity with others. He listened deeply to this place of faith, letting go and mystery. For me, these are Bodhidharma's great gifts to us all, and I hope that you may have touched some of this in these 10 days. This text, those small 4 paragraphs, for me is such a beautiful and pithy text, and I really hope that you will take time to sit with it. You can see how differently all three of us related to it, which is the beauty of a brilliant text. So please, sit with it and see how it speaks to you. Can you?
And you really pointed to the love that is present in Bodhidharma, which I think we miss sometimes. There's almost a motherly quality to Bodhidharma, even just to his form. I think it's quite palpable, actually, just if you go into the founder's room and gaze a bit, I think you'll see that. And that's been an archetypal practice question in the Zen tradition for centuries. Why did Bodhidharma make this journey? So it's really, that question is all about the heart and all about bodhicitta. It's about the love that underlies all of this. Why would we do this otherwise? And often we don't know why we're doing it. And we don't even necessarily say it explicitly, but it's always here. This practice is filled with love. So why sit in front of a wall? As Enryu also pointed out, Bodhidharma embodies these two complementary dynamics of total presence, total stillness, and total activity and engagement. I was thinking the other day of this aspect of the Bodhidharma story after he leaves the emperor. He has this great encounter with Emperor Wu, and they have this profoundly transformative exchange. Bodhidharma leaves, and Emperor Wu's assistant says, "Do you realize that that was the Bodhisattva of great compassion, Avalokiteshvara?" And Emperor Wu is just kind of stopped in his tracks. And he says, "Well, let's go get him and bring him back." And the assistant says, "Even if you sent 1,000 men, he wouldn't come back." And initially, it's a little mysterious. Well, why? And why wouldn't he come back? But I was just thinking of that total immersiveness of Bodhidharma's activity, that he doesn't go back. He's totally engaged in activity, and there's no looking back. There's no trace. Bodhidharma is very much a figure of vow. We venerate Jizo and connect with Jizo, Kshitigarbha, as the Bodhisattva of vow. But Bodhidharma, the image of Bodhidharma, the presence of Bodhidharma is a very powerful source of vow energy. And it fuses the vow energy with that deep mystery, the koan of existence, the koan of being alive, and how the vow is inseparable from that. The vow is not just some religious ideal or some principle or vocation, but it actually is inherent in just this mystery of being alive. It's part of what it is to be human. You could say that Bodhidharma also embodies the path of Buddhism as it's traveled throughout the world. Bodhidharma's story in many ways recapitulates the Buddha's story, Shakyamuni's story of being a prince, leaving the palace, embarking out on this journey, leaving his culture, leaving his familiar home, and offering himself. And so in that way, it's the Dharma itself, the generosity of the Dharma itself manifested in Bodhidharma. That's why I kept saying, be Dharma during sesshin. That really was evocative for me in the sense that that's really Bodhidharma's message to us. Be Dharma. You want to say some more?
When Enryu and Kennyo have finished talking, then we'd like to open it up to everyone here. Please ask questions to help bring out their wisdom. Just contemplate that now.
One of the things that was really moving for me was just the time to really feel like what it would be like to be Bodhidharma. And it made me think about the value of really settling into life experiences of our ancestors. And a few moments came up for me that I was using this session, and I wanted to share those with you. Sort of a response to the stop seeking aspect of Bodhidharma's advice. One is what I call the rose apple tree moment of Siddhartha Gautama's life. This experience of ease. I often find when we think about the life story of the Buddha, we're thinking about a story of seeking, and we don't spend enough time on these moments of actually fulfillment and contentment and inspiration. And so I was wondering if we could take a moment to enjoy this rose apple tree together, just to imagine a dense crown of slender, wide-spreading branches, the dark green leaves, the clusters of flowers, the pink blushed fruit. Just brings attention to this feeling of solidity as you sink into the earth. The rootedness of your seat. The length and stability of your spine. Attention to your skin. The soft touch of the air. Can appreciate this posture as a direct gateway to Siddhartha's experience, his feeling of ease. Just take a moment to appreciate this. Another significant moment for me is when Siddhartha receives the milk rice offering from a place of almost being dead. He receives this beautiful offering. So let's enjoy this moment of receiving this timeless offering of milk rice. You can become aware of your palms. You can open your palms. Feel your vulnerability, your discomfort, your exhaustion. And then imagine receiving the blessing of milk rice, just the right meal for you. You can take a moment to appreciate this posture as a direct gateway to Siddhartha's experience, his feeling of fulfillment. Now let's place ourselves in front of a wall. Feel the deep stirring of Bodhidharma's breath. It's caring for you. How it's transforming the cold wind of karma into this warm, supportive breeze. May we really feel moved by these experiences of our ancestors.
Could somebody pass the...
Can we ask
other-
a question?
Yes. Yeah, Michaela has a question. Koyu.
Enryu, a burning question came up for me during this retreat. And when you speak of Siddhartha, you speak with such love. It was like you knew him. And I know that you have your master's in Sanskrit, and I know that you wrote your thesis. It was a translation of a poem on the Buddha's life. So my burning question was, what do you think it was about that morning star? What was it that awoke Buddha?
the benefit of the audience, tell them the story because they may not be familiar with that.
Well, it is said that Buddha was enlightened on the morning star, that he sat all night after he had his meal. And there was something about the morning star where he gained enlightenment.
Well, I think he was touched by the sense of connection to all things. He was touched by the very universal experience of suffering that he had seen when he journeyed out of the bubble of his safe palace. And when he saw the morning star, I think he felt a sense of support, the light, connectiveness, a symbol of his potential and capacity, the mystery, something a lot bigger than the small picture, moved him. Does that answer your question?
I always like to know about historical figures within their own history. What is the background of this time? What was the political situation? What was Emperor Wu's empire like? Was he a beneficent emperor? Apparently, if he was promoting Buddhism. Give me a historical background around this time.
I know very little about that.
You know more than me. Do you know anything?
Almost nothing.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
May your life go well.
How do we suffer the injustices of others, when others are the recipients of that injustice?
Meaning, how do you not have your heart break when someone else is suffering?
How do I not have my heart break? What is a correct action to take when witnessing such an event? How are we not roused to action, roused to reactivity?
Yeah, you're saying two different things. Roused to reactivity is probably not that useful, maybe not that helpful. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to give something space to not do. And then something in that space, often a correct action will bubble forth and will become obvious. Just like in the chant that we were saying. You won't have to ask, is this right or wrong? It will become as clear as your grandfather's face in the village.
Kennyo, this is your favorite topic, so why don't you answer, what do we do in the face of injustice? How does the Dharma apply?
Well, it's important to have a clear view. So to maintain the big picture, the big perspective, and not become fixated on some particular view of things. And then when we act, we're acting out of compassion and wisdom, genuine compassion. Sometimes I just pray to be guided to the path of true compassion. So I know what it feels like to act from a different place in response to injustice and to what I perceive as wrong. And that doesn't help. So I can feel the difference, and I trust that more and more. It's easy to become intellectually very entangled about these matters, and I wonder how much of that intellectual response is really helpful too. Sometimes the action that's needed is quite simple, actually. It's helpful to be able to hold complexity, and it's important to recognize systemic issues and be able to diagnose suffering on a systemic scale, and to really think clearly about those things and not shy away from that. But sometimes the action that's needed is very simple and very clear.
Eric, do you have more to add to your question?
I would love to think on it.
I'll just suggest one thing that I do. I actually have a dedication list that I make for myself, and I put the names of all the people that I care for that are having hardships. And I actually do a little dedication in the morning when I sit. It's just a really direct way of sending support and loving kindness practice that can be helpful.
I mean, our core practice is opening of the heart with compassion and kindness. And I always see images of bodhisattvas and Buddhas, and they're very gentle and open-hearted and displaying that bodhisattva nature. And yet all the pictures I see of Bodhidharma are fierce and glowering, and he must have had that deep heart and compassion, but yet the images of him never don't show that generally. They're usually intimidating to look at. Could you help me? What are your thoughts about why Bodhidharma is portrayed that way when the core images that we usually see are of this gentleness and compassion? Or maybe I'm not seeing those images in the right way, but could you answer that?
It takes a lot of intense work and effort to actually be compassionate and move in the way. And so I think it's kind of an interesting, contrasting image to sort of just soft, sort of very, I find it very inspiring actually, just the sheer grinding effort actually of trying to move in the world with an open heart, and to take this huge vow to benefit all beings, that requires tremendous determination.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that maybe we're seeing the more difficult aspects of the heart opening. The heart opening is not always a very pleasant experience. And sometimes it feels to me like what Bodhidharma looks like. And so that energy is a part of opening the heart too, very much so.
And I guess his teachings, perhaps more than others, display that the ferocity that's required of the heart.
Yeah, maybe in ways that aren't always touched by some of the other images. Yeah.
Can you talk about the terrific figures of Vajrayana Buddhism beneath this point?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. The wrathful deities in Tibetan Vajrayana and in other systems of tantric Buddhism, including Japanese Tantra and Chinese, embody the intense energies and the afflictive emotions transformed into compassion. So they're the enlightened manifestations of these energies that are often more difficult to work with, are violent or chaotic, or just deep instinctual energies. So the figures often have, they're often therianthropes, so they're human-animal hybrids, or they have some animal qualities, or they have very prominent sexual characteristics, or they have weapons, they're stomping on corpses, they're tearing flesh apart with their teeth. I mean, they're very graphic images beyond like horror movie stuff. And they're intended for that, to connect with those energies which are part of life in a way that is guided by wisdom and compassion.
I guess it was about a week or so before we started the session that the hurricane tore through Florida and really chewed up a lot of western Florida, central Florida. And as I was thinking about Bodhidharma's practices, accept adversity, adapt to circumstances, stop seeking. That sounds like a formula for passivity, for simply saying, well, the hurricane happened, I guess our life is wrecked, we just have to accept that and be passive about it. Can you respond to that?
Well, I don't think you have a choice about any of those things. I think you could resist, but at some point you will have to let go. And so I think, we've all tried that, not to accept adversity. We've tried not to adapt. We've tried to just seek and seek and seek, but we're not satisfied. So he's just stating, in some ways, the obvious, that those are dead ends. And at some point, you're just going to have to face that. And the beauty of that is that that's the source of creativity in life. If you can let go of resistance, you can let go of yourself as a perpetual thought-making machine, then you can drop into a space where you can actually connect with something much bigger. I think we can notice in Sesshin, here we are sitting in this extremely boring lockdown container, with no room, and yet exploding brilliance of everyone is just so obvious. We are so creative, we're so beautiful, and it's vivid in Sesshin. So the deeper you just drop down, don't resist, the more explosion of creative juice comes out in your life. One of the reasons I come to Sesshin is actually it's the source. It's part of my dance practice. It's literally the source of my creative life, and I think a lot of people actually engage in this sort of practice for that reason. So I don't think of it as a kind of disengagement. I think of this as the source, the point of full engagement. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I like that image of Bodhidharma's teaching as a teaching of total engagement. I like that.
So you be clear about this. We've got the issue Eric brought up of the injustices of the world, or the issue Alan brought up of the disasters in the world. How does the Dharma apply to meet directly these challenges? What does not seeking have to do with the devastation of Hurricane Ian? Or what does not adapting to circumstances have to do with the endless stream of injustice in the world? How does it apply?
One obvious way to think about that is in terms of the fourth practice, which I notice people keep leaving out when they ask this kind of question, which is acting in accord with the Dharma. So aligning with the reality of generosity, of compassion, aligning with the precepts, aligning with the good. That's the fourth practice. But I think more generally, these are practices to help us adapt to any conditions that could possibly arise. So it's one thing to have an ideological view and think, the world should be this way, and I'm going to act to make it this way. But it's a different thing to be so flexible fundamentally that you're ready for anything. You're ready to respond to any situation. And you don't have some idea about what's going to happen or how it's supposed to be that limits your action, but you're completely open and available to respond to anything. To me, that a person with that capacity is the most effective activist there could possibly be.
I don't know if I have anything to add to that.
Anybody else, please? Time for another question. So what we're doing is we're helping people discover their own wisdom. We're stretching their Dharma muscles. So there are many kinds of questions. There's petitionary questions, but then there's questions that really are gifts. And so we're asking for the gift of questions that you can give to Anusha, Enryu, and Kennyo.
So in your Dharma talks this week, both of you mentioned love, acting as if love is a burning fire, or if love is the point of all of this. And I'm wondering if you can say more about that, and what is love? What are the qualities that you're referring to when you say that?
Well, just the fact that you sat there with me for 10 days, didn't move. I mean, that for me is just a huge display of love. You know, that there's a feeling of caring. We don't even know each other, but we're willing to hold this container. For me, that's extremely moving and actually is completely established on love.
A mystery, for sure. Maybe it's the mystery that underlies this whole matter of faith. There's a sense of unconditionality to it, for me, of no matter what. And I don't know how to describe what that posture of the heart is, or what it is that opens up at that level, but maybe it's just openness, you know, to anything at all. Maybe that's what love is metaphysically, just openness to anything. In that sense, you could say love is the nature of reality. But connecting with that as a practice, you know, sometimes I have to get pushed to a limit of feeling like I've really lost it, or I've really failed, in order to get to that place of finding what's left then at that point. What's left? what opens up even then, even when I've fallen as much as I thought I could fall.
Deep breath, so it's a bit from the heart. You can do this.
Sometimes it feels like the balm of this space is also the conflict that rises up in me. I don't know if there's a question in there so much as a statement. I guess I'm having trouble holding to things at once in a lot of ways lately. What do I do with conflict? It's a box I want to put down and it's glued to me.
I've been working on this dance piece, which is an exploration of Dakini mythology, and one of the really amazing images is bringing your demons to the table, inviting everything in for a feast. And I think that's actually just such a valuable practice to make peace with those troubling aspects of our own experience, just to really feed them, nurture them, invite them in, and then, like you say, then the balm and the problem is this, it becomes united. That's helpful.
So one last person, I think Kosho has something burning inside, so let's give the mic to her.
I guess I'm just sitting with this image of someone sitting alone for 9 years in a cave, and what was his faith that he was benefiting anybody by doing that, when I'm sure there were many urgent problems happening around him in his world when he entered the cave. And how did he know it was time to leave? How did he know what to do next? And was it smooth, or did he face many challenges?
It's tough.
To answer these questions, you have to become Bodhidharma. It's not about his
know if I can answer those questions. Those are. I mean, I think often we're all sitting in a cave alone. I mean, what makes you come out of your cave? And what stirs the heart? How do you find orientation? I think it needs to come from some place of stillness and confidence, right? Not just a lot of anxious thoughts. I think the practice that he's doing is showing us that.
I'm not sure he was alone.